The following program contains explicit calls to political action. If you are addicted to the tax-exempt status, Randall might not be right for you. Check with your little sister.
Speaking the truth when others hold their tongues. Wrestling for justice with left-wingers and crocodiles. Resisting the temptation to keep the peace at any price. The only talk show host who writes his own theme music, Randall Terry.
Hello, friends. I've just come from the principal's office. Turns out that a young boy was sent home from elementary school because he came to school with an armed cupcake. And evidently, Dennis Rodman did not get the entire memo about North Korea's intentions with us, or perhaps he just didn't tell us the whole memo. And big news, the legislature in Arkansas overrides the governor's veto there to introduce a bill that provides just a little bit of protection to some of our unborn brothers and sisters. That and so much more, but first, a quick and profound word of wisdom from a man who just embodies taste in clothing. Oh yeah, he's a looker, the professor.
Great Scott! The US dollar has the same trajectory as the meteorite that fell in Russia. One of my graduate students asked me, "What is that trajectory?" And I said, "Down, you blistering idiot! Down! A meteorite falls down!"
Thank you, Professor. It's good to see you again, by the way. You're looking good. All right. The Pope. Who will he be? We don't know yet, but we know that the College of Cardinals is meeting in the Vatican right now to elect the next Holy Father of the Roman Catholic Church. They are going to use a time-tested means of the election of the next Pope. Paper, scissors, rock. All right, I'm joking. We will be following that story, by the way. And let us pray that the next Pope is an evangelist who has the guts and the courage and the integrity and the devotion to truth, that he tells the bishops around the world, stop giving communion to politicians who kill babies. The end. All right. Dennis Rodman. This guy has got guts. He's a little short on brains, but you got to admire his courage. He might not have gotten the memo exactly right, because even as we speak, Kim Jong-un has revoked the armistice between North and South in North Korea and on the Korean Peninsula. And by the way, did you know that North and South Korea are still formally at a state of war? Yes. What we have is a ceasefire, and they're saying we're going to revoke that ceasefire. So tensions are high. They are even practicing war games in South Korea. I think that's what provoked Dennis Rodman to say, I'm going back. Yes, he released another press release saying, I'm going back to vacation with Kim. I mean, we both know that we like basketball games. Maybe we can get into some of these war games together. We'll keep you posted on that as well. And in Michigan, a bizarre story. A little boy, Hunter Fountain, on his way, or rather in elementary school, he is in the Shaw Elementary School in Caro, Michigan, was sent home by the principal, Susan Wright. Why? Because he came to school with cupcakes that had little action figures of World War II soldiers. The principal said that people would be offended, and in a democratic process, we have to honor the opinions of other people. And so she sent the boy home with his cupcakes. The moral of the story is this, Mom and Dad. Don't worry. Your little boy can have the tar beat out of him on the playground, but it won't be by a little G.I. Joe action figure. All right, let's talk about Arkansas. This is some really exciting news. The the Arkansas legislature has passed a law on March the 6th that will make it a crime in the state of Arkansas for an abortionist, also known as baby killer, to kill an unborn human baby after 12 weeks of pregnancy. Now, I'm going to give you an in-depth analysis of this bill when we come back, as well as the players, the so-called right-to-life players, who are showing themselves to be Benedict Arnolds, friends of the killers, cowards, useless enemies of life, who say that they're pro-life and are speaking to the media against the bill. And yes, as you might have guessed, it's one of the big shots at national right to life. If, by the way, you do have a desire to give a $100 bill to National Right to Life, may I suggest that you take it and shred it into itty-bitty pieces and flush it down the nearest commode, because there at least it will do less harm for the unborn. Don't go away, I'll be right back. Friend, you need to get this book, We Won't Get Fooled Again. Listen to this. I came to the conclusion that most folks were left over from the Reagan era who were no longer warriors, but are now either too old or unhealthy, and had compromised and become comfortable with the Republican establishment. They turned these organizations pretty much into direct mail fundraising fronts and were making tons of money and living the good life in beautiful mansions. The conservative movement had transformed itself from a very dynamic, principled organization in the Reagan years to a bunch of compromising, useless, and ineffective money-making machines. I'm reading to you from the new blockbuster book, We Won't Get Fooled Again, that names names, shows organizations, shows how they say that they're Christian, but they betray Christ, they betray biblical principles in the public square, and we are funding them. Go to the website, call us on the phone, and order it today. I'll send it to you for free if you want. God bless you. Welcome back, friend. The Arkansas Human Heartbeat Protection Act. After all, who could be against protecting a human heartbeat? Evidently, the governor of the state, Governor Michael Beebe. By the way, is it pronounced Beebe or Dweeb? I'm sorry, yes? Beebe, Dweeb, Screeb. Anyway, the governor of the state vetoed the law, and in 2 days, he vetoed it on March the 4th, and then the Senate and the House on the 5th and 6th of March, respectively, overrode his veto, and the bill became law. Now, let me tell you who the key players are and what the bill actually says and doesn't say. All right. The sponsor of the bill is Senator Jason Rappert. He's a Republican. He is the former vice president of Gideon's International, who distributes Bibles in hotels and other places around the world. He's the founder and the president of Holy Ghost Ministries, done missions to Africa and the Philippines. He is the pastor of the Sanctuary of Hope Church. In other words, this man is a very devout evangelical Christian. On the House side, the lady who is the chief sponsor of the bill, her name is Representative Ann Clemmer. She is an evangelical Protestant. She works at a college as a faculty member there, and she acknowledged that this bill is in fact going to be tested, but they did the best that they could given the hand that they were dealt. So, what does the bill do? Number one, it requires that a woman have an ultrasound, audio ultrasound, to detect the heartbeat of a human baby. If she is 12 weeks pregnant and the baby's heartbeat can be heard, then it would be a criminal act, including fines and jail time, for any doctor who then killed the baby. It would not, I repeat, would not include any prosecution at any level for a woman who went to pay somebody to kill her baby. Also, a baby who was conceived, allegedly, or truthfully in rape or incest could also be killed. If the mother's life is in jeopardy, physical jeopardy, such as a tubal pregnancy, the baby can be killed. And if there are fatal abnormalities in the baby. Now that one you just got to stop on for a minute and say, what does that mean? All of us are going to die. We all have fatal abnormalities. It's called being human. None of us are getting out of here alive. And that particular exception is intensely problematic. So, let me first tell you why I'm happy that this bill happened, why I find it problematic on some levels, and then we'll talk about some of the treacherous, the Benedict Arnolds that are in our midst that have helped sustain the slaughter of over 50 million babies. And by the way, Senator Rappert said, when is enough enough? And he compared America's 50 million dead babies to the Rwandan Holocaust. Now here is why, using that logic, here is why the bill does not go far enough. One would presume that if you opposed the slaughter that happened in Rwanda, hundreds of thousands of people being butchered, decapitated, their skulls thrown in churches, that you would be opposed to Rwandans of all ages and genders and health conditions being murdered, right? In other words, we're opposed to genocide. The problem with this bill is, it says, number one, if you're this young or younger, the law allows you to be killed. Number two, if you're this old or older, but you came into the world in a less than ideal circumstance, the law allows you to be killed. Does that sound just to you? Does it sound consistent to you? These human beings, protect them. These, no. All right. That's why these types of bills are problematic. And please hear this. I want to be very clear. I probably would have voted for this bill had I been in the state legislature at the time, voicing the objections I'm voicing now. But what would have been cleaner and better is if the bill simply said, at 12 weeks, no human being can be killed, period. Doesn't matter how they were conceived. Doesn't matter if they have a fetal abnormality. The only exception that has always been permissible in the West, in Christian tradition, is if the mother's life is physically, immediately threatened by the continuation of the baby living inside her, namely an ectopic pregnancy or a fallopian tube pregnancy. If a baby is growing inside of a mother's fallopian tube, the baby is going to die because that tube is going to rupture. And then the mother may die as well. So at that point, under the doctrine, the theology of self-defense, the mother is permitted ethically to have the baby removed because both mother and child are going to die otherwise. So with that exception, it would have been better, more ethical, more consistent if it had been an across-the-board ban. All right, here's why this, and one other problem. You probably know this, but in case you don't, actually, I'll ask it as a little quiz. Do you know when the human heart begins to beat? Do you know when your heart began to beat when you were inside of your mommy's tummy, as we say to our little boys? 18 days after your conception. 18 days, the human heart begins to beat. And they can hear a human heartbeat long before 12 weeks, friends. Long before 12 weeks. They had to settle on 12 weeks in part due to, well, I'm guessing politically now, due to the debacle that recently happened in Ohio with a similar bill, and in order to bring enough squishy Democrats and squishy Republicans along so that they had the votes to override the governor's veto. And 12 weeks is the end of the first trimester. So this politically is a way of saying, okay, we're going to outlaw most child killing after the first trimester. So, should have been moved back, should have been a ban on all babies after a certain time. Now, here's why this is good. Because it forces the child killers to defend snuffing out an innocent human being's life whose heart is beating. What do you mean, human heartbeat protection? But what are we talking about? I thought it was like an egg yolk. I didn't know that this looked like a baby. What do you mean? At 10 weeks, we can do an ultrasound and watch that little boy doing somersaults? Watch that little girl sucking her thumb? And at 10 weeks, you can still kill that little baby? It forces the bad guys to defend this abominable crime, this horrific Holocaust, this murder of the innocents. Now, we would expect Planned Parenthood to howl in rage. But when we have men like this, who have made hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of dollars in salaries off of their work, supposedly for the babies, who are instead condemning the bill, then you understand why we are losing. Who is this man? What has he said? I'll tell you when we come back from this break. Friend, you need to get this book. We Won't Get Fooled Again. Listen to this. I came to the conclusion that most folks were left over from the Reagan era who were no longer warriors, but are now either too old or unhealthy and had compromised and become comfortable with the Republican establishment. They turned these organizations pretty much into direct mail fundraising fronts and were making tons of money and living the good life in beautiful mansions. The conservative movement had transformed itself from a very dynamic, principled organization in the Reagan years to a bunch of compromising, useless, and ineffective money-making machines. I'm reading to you from the new blockbuster book, We Won't Get Fooled Again, that names names, shows organizations, shows how they say that they're Christian, but they betray Christ, they betray biblical principles in the public square, and we are funding them. Go to the website, call us on the phone, and order it today. I'll send it to you for free if you want. God bless you. Welcome back to the program, friend. This man, who is he? What has he said? And what has he done and is he doing that keeps us from winning the war against legalized child killing? Today's villain is this man, James Bopp. James Bopp. And I won't tease his name because, well, that would just be juvenile of me. James Bopp said, and he, by the way, is the general counsel. That means he's the big shot lawyer for National Right to Life. And he said, and I quote, "As much as we would like to protect the unborn at that point, it is futile and it won't save any babies." He went, let me just say this to Mr. Bopp. Number one, it's not futile. You have to have, by the way, what he's saying is futile is that this bill will be struck down by the Supreme Court. They're not going to let anything stand that outlaws child killing before viability. For those of you who don't know, viability means that a baby can be born prematurely, but is still viable. The baby, the boy or the girl, can live outside the mother's womb in an intensive care unit or a neonatal intensive care unit. Babies are born in America every single day at 22 weeks, 23 weeks, sometimes as early as 21 weeks gestation, and the babies live, they survive. That's how far medicine has gotten with the saving, the physical human saving of these premature babies. Bopp says the courts aren't going to let anything stand that outlaws child killing before viability. Mr. Bopp, so what? So what? How will you know unless you present something? Do you realize, friend, that after 40 years of slaughter, not one state has passed a bill of this nature at 12 weeks with all of these loopholes? Not one. Maybe if we had passed a lot of bills like this, we would have already overturned Roe. Maybe if we'd have fought to control state legislatures and governor's mansions and had successfully passed one bill after another and clogged up the federal pipeline to the judiciary, maybe some of these judicial tyrants would have gotten the message that we're not going to sit by and let people murder our babies. And maybe, just maybe, if cowards and knaves and treacherous Benedict Arnolds like James Bopp were not leading multi-million-dollar 501c3 tax-exempt groups that have already cut a deal with the devil to let child killing go forward, maybe if they weren't setting the agenda for an awful lot of well-meaning but naive pro-lifers, maybe we would have already prevailed. To win a war, you have to win battles. Using Bopp's rhetoric, or rather logic, it would be like saying landing at Normandy Beach is futile because the Germans occupy France. They occupy Belgium and Holland. They have huge airfields in France. They control the Ruhr Valley. They control Paris. The Free French won't let us fight there. It's futile to land at Normandy Beach. What we want to do is cause the Germans to lose and take Berlin. Hey, you can't win the war without winning battles. And you can't win battles without risking the loss of some battles. I've got to take a break. When we come back, what this means to you and I. And I also want to show you one other treacherous pro-lifer. Oh yes, he's from Ohio, Right to Life. He couldn't keep his mouth shut, just had to chime in. Do yourself a favor. Don't give money to these treacherous organizations. Let them wither and die. I'll be right back. Friend, you need to get this book. We Won't Get Fooled Again. Listen to this. I came to the conclusion that most folks were left over from the Reagan era who were no longer warriors, but are now either too old or unhealthy and had compromised and become comfortable with the Republican establishment. They turned these organizations pretty much into direct mail fundraising fronts and were making tons of money and living the good life in beautiful mansions. The conservative movement had transformed itself from a very dynamic, principled organization in the Reagan years to a bunch of compromising, useless, and ineffective money-making machines. I'm reading to you from the new blockbuster book, We Won't Get Fooled Again, that names names, shows organizations, shows how they say that they're Christian, but they betray Christ, they betray biblical principles in the public square, and we are funding them. Go to the website, call us on the phone, and order it today. I'll send it to you for free if you want. God bless you. Welcome back to the program. Not to be outdone by James Bopp. Scooping up the field, mice at... Oh, wait, I said I wasn't going to mock. Okay, Michael Ganadakis. He is the head of Ohio Right to Life, one of the affiliates of National Right to Life. And he said, when you pass a law, the goal is surviving in court. It's easy to say, let's save all the babies, but you could pass 100 bills a day and they'll never go into effect and save one baby's life. By the way, Mr. Ganadakis and Mr. Bopp are both attorneys. Perhaps the moral of the story is that we don't want attorneys running the pro-life movement or any significant part thereof. Anyway, that aside, no, sir, the goal of passing a bill is not necessarily having it survive. That is clearly one of the goals, but one of the purposes of passing a bill is to educate the public. One of them is to create social tension. One of the purposes, if you did pass 100 bills a day, might be to show the American people that we are not a free people who have true representative government. We are the knaves and subjects and servants and slaves of a judicial oligarchy, of dictators who wear black robes and make laws from their little benches in their courtrooms. There's a lot of reasons why you pass a bill, even if you think it might get struck down in court. That's what we need to focus on, not simply whether or not you can pacify some God-hating, baby-killing judge. Have a nice day.